lunch. When Pastor Joe asked me to speak back in August, I said sure, didn't even really think about it. Then I started to think about everything there was to share and panicked. Literally started to panic. I decided that I did not want this to be what I did on my summer vacation and just a slideshow of everything that we did. My family had to live through that my first year, and after the first 50 pictures told me they didn't need to see the same cow 4 different times. So I decided I wanted you to walk through my journey that will hopefully lead you to ask yourself what I can do. So, before we start, because Bosnia happened back in the early 90s, the war, I have a video. I'm just going to give you a heads up. There are scenes from the war from news organizations. So if that could impact you, I do want you to be aware. And just as Laura shared, there are plenty of pastors here should you need to talk, or any individuals who are caring and willing to listen. So, can you hear it okay?
This war included the longest siege in modern times. Welcome to WatchWalker.com, and today we'll be learning more about the Bosnian War. Possession of Bosnia-Herzegovina traded back and forth for centuries. In 1908, the country was annexed by Austria-Hungary. In 1918, following the dissolution of Austria-Hungary, Bosnia joined 5 other socialist territories to form Yugoslavia. This remained the status quo until the early 1990s. At that point, Slovenia, Croatia, and Macedonia each successively voted to leave Yugoslavia and waged war in many of those regions. At that point in Bosnia, 3 main ethnic groups formed the population. Almost half were Slavic Muslim Bosniaks, while Orthodox Christian Serbs comprised just over 30%, and Catholic Croats were 17% of the populace. Serb nationalists within Bosnia were strongly against the idea of the country's independence. At the end of February 1992, Bosnia voted in a referendum on the subject. Serbs boycotted the vote in favor of creating their own republic called the Serbian Republic of Bosnia and Herzegovina. However, those who did vote chose to secede from Yugoslavia, and so the Republic of Bosnia and Herzegovina was declared at the beginning of March 1992. Within a month, the newly created country was attacked by Serbian forces, with support from Slobodan Milosevic's Serbian government and the Yugoslav People's Army. Aside from the desire to claim new territory for Greater Serbia, the Serbs wanted to ethnically cleanse the population of Muslims. Initially, Croats and Bosniaks teamed up in the face of this Serb threat. The infamous siege of Sarajevo began early in the war, in April 1992, when Serb forces took the predominantly Muslim capital city. This 4-year siege resulted in the deaths or disappearances of roughly 10,000 people from the city, including many children. As residents scrambled for basic human needs, they were also required to evade sniper fire while in the streets. 1992 also marked the start of the genocide against the non-Serbian populations of Bosnia. Those groups were intimidated, tortured, and killed, with villages and homes destroyed. Targeted groups became refugees or were held in detention camps. By the end of the year, the Serbs occupied roughly 70% of the country. Croat forces had also shifted from a defensive stance and began seizing land also. This began a war within a war, referred to as the Croat-Bosniak War. That battle overshadowed much of 1993. That year, the UN sent aid to Bosnia, but was criticized for being largely ineffectual in the face of this conflict. By 1994, NATO intervened by launching airstrikes against the Serbs. While this succeeded in ending some sieges, fighting continued. When the Croat-Bosniak War ended that year, those groups reteamed to fight the Serbs together. As conflict continued into 1995, one of the most violent crimes on European soil since the Second World War took place. In July, the town of Srebrenica was massacred by the Bosnian Serb army, despite being a UN safe zone. Over 8,000 were killed, and more were wounded and displaced. However, this was one of many similar massacres that year. NATO forces again used airstrikes against the Serbs, which helped Bosnian government forces reclaim lost territory. The end of hostilities came week soon after. In November 1995, the Dayton Peace Agreement was reached in Dayton, Ohio by the Serbian, Croatian, and Bosnian presidents. When this agreement went into force, it marked the war's official end. As stated in the accord, Bosnia-Herzegovina was split into two independent states, one Bosniak and Croat, the other Serb. National elections were also called, and a NATO-led peacekeeping effort began. However, much of the population was unhappy with the country's division. Though exact numbers are disputed, the Bosnian War resulted in 25 to 330,000 deaths. It caused the destruction of numerous historic buildings and monuments and created hundreds of thousands of refugees. Atrocities seen during the war included genocide, mass rape, and emotional subjugation. And in the years following the conflict, numerous figures were tried for war crimes. Though Bosnia's rebuilding period continues, the effects of this war will undoubtedly echo for years.
After the war, the country's constitution stipulated a complex power sharing system among the defined three groups: Bosnian Serbs, Bosnian Croats, and the Bosniaks. There are a total of 5 presidents, consisting of a 3-person national presidency with a rotating chairperson. The position of chairperson rotates twice around the 3 members every 8 months, with the candidate receiving the most votes overall becoming the first chairperson over the 4-year term. The other 2 members are reserved from one constituent from the Republic of Srpska and the Federation. The National Parliament of Bosnia and Herzegovina is also limited in its ability to make laws with requirements of a specified level of support for legislation within both entities. The Parliament is made up of 2 chambers, the House of Peoples and the House of Representatives, both of which have specific ethnic quotas. The House of Peoples has 15 members, evenly split between the 3 groups of people, and they are elected by the Parliament of the 2 entities. The House of Representatives has 42 members, 14 for the Republic of Srpska, and 28 from the Federation of Bosnia and Herzegovina. And 14 are typically from Croatian background, and the other 14 from that 28 are from Bosnia background. The Federation, in turn, is divided into cantons, loosely inspired by the Swiss government structure. There are 10 cantons in the Federation. 5 of the cantons have Bosniak majority, 3 have Croatian majority, and 2 of the cantons are considered ethnically mixed. The Republic of Srpska's parliament does not share this same feature. So I just kind of gave you a little bit of background so you can kind of see where some of that level of distrust comes from. But really what I want to do is just kind of share some of my journal readings, my reflections, especially from the first time that I was there. But just to give you a little bit of background, before I read my journals, before I went on the first trip, on Netflix there's a documentary called The White Helmets, which is about the daily airstrikes that were happening in Syria prior to 2016. So I do reference that comparison in my journal a couple of times. And my first journal entry is after we heard from one of the widows of Srebrenica, whose husband and sons were killed, and her name is Fadula Afinitic. So June 25th, 2017. Talk about a day with lots of highs and lots of lows. This day started with our second friendship camp at Leptir. The children were so loving and accepting of us. I think it put us to ease some of the discomfort from people who may have had working with special needs children. I love seeing the kids getting excited about being a yuk or a zuk. We probably had the deepest conversation out of the 5 times we have done the play so far at Latir. I think the simple honesty of the children's responses drove our conversation. Camp today made me excited about being a traveler and going around to each station at one of the camps. This afternoon, we went to the memorial in Srebrenica, and it was another example of the beauty within the destruction of our world. To think, over 8,372 men and boys lost their life over a 3-day period. The grave markers reminded me of a national cemetery in the United States with the rows and rows of headstones. The wall of names reminds me of the Vietnam Wall in Washington, D.C., with all of the names there. The only difference being Srebrenica was a 3-day event, and the Vietnam War was years. The woman who spoke to us had an aura of love about her. In her grief, she is able to find love and joy. She shared her story not to complain, but to help the world to see we need to work on problem solving to solve the problems of our world. It is so amazing to know others were so moved by the destruction in Syria that they too decided to come to Bosnia. Hopefully, each of our lights glow brightly, and we can start to problem solve the next area with its beauty in the middle of destruction. God's light from Srebrenica. The next day, we went back to Srebrenica, and they have a war memorial about the 3 days that led to the genocide there. And part of that, we watched a video where the Bosnian Serb army videotaped them killing men and boys in the aftermath of that. So I just want you to know, using that kind of as a frame of reference, that's what my next journal entry kind of reflects on. How can a leader see a group of people as objects? This is the question running through my head after visiting the factory next to the memorial in Srebrenica. The Serbian leader saw a group of people as objects, and each person that was killed was a trophy. The Bosniak people did not even warrant the respect of proper burial, or the effort to move their body in a respectful way. They had to go get fresh batteries for the camera before the executions occurred. I have such anger towards the Serbian leaders. When we no longer look at a person as someone who has humanity, the person becomes an object, and we lose our empathy to see their situation. I feel this is what is happening in Syria. It's ISIS versus Assad's army, and only one side can be right. Unfortunately, neither side is right, because they allow the Syrian people to suffer. Both sides are hurting the people of Syria, and not each other as the leaders. Thank you for the brave rescuers who wear the white helmets. They remember the humanity of their fellow people and show love and compassion. When will we, as a national and global community, remember we are all humans and are a part of each other's humanity? Until this lesson is learned, we are doomed to repeat the events that have occurred in Bosnia and Herzegovina and Rwanda and now Syria. So, based off of all that history, we would travel around and we would do friendship camps. Because I think it's pretty obvious that there is, as much as before the war that the communities were mixed, they were interacting together. It didn't matter if you were Serbian, if you were Croatian, Bosniak, Roma, whatever, you interacted. But after the war, there's such hurt and distrust. And every family, it didn't matter what side you're on, did suffer some kind of trauma. If you were in the army, you come back with those scars. If you were having the violence done to you, you come back, you are dealing with that trauma and trying to trust again. It didn't matter where you were. So these peace camps became very important. In some towns, even if there is some diversity, there are really just 2 schools in a school. So this means the students do not mix with each other. Classes, lunch, and recess are all separate. Sometimes the peace camps, the friendship camps, are the only time that ethnic groups would mix together for an entire year, because that's the one beauty of the friendship camps. Kids would come back year after year after year. The camps, and this is, I forgot, Kozarach, which when they talk about the detention center, so many families from this community, but there was also massive killing. This is a memorial in the middle of town, and it's a circle, and there are just name, and you can see family names. And this is part of a picture I took where I just stood in the middle and did a panoramic view of the full circle, just because it's so overwhelming to see the names, but it's also a beauty that they remember and are honoring them. So here are our friendship camps, and they consist of 4 activities. One activity is music, which is kind of the top right-hand corner, so you can see that. Another aspect of it is a skit, which is the bottom left-hand corner, where we're acting out different things. Games, which is the bottom right-hand corner, and then we called it the servant group, but it often involved arts and crafts, which is the top left-hand corner picture. The whole day takes about 3 to 4 hours because we do serve lunch. The activities are meant to build teamwork between everyone. During these activities, there is a chance to meet someone you might make a connection with, even when there is a language barrier. Connections can be made through play, laughter, song, and actions. So the bottom left-hand corner is a picture of myself and someone named Lazar. That is the second year that I went to Bosnia. And I'm just going to share a little bit about my experience meeting Lazar and then the experience I had with him the following year. So, I can't believe I'm not in Bosnia or Herzegovina tonight. I'm writing in pencil because the tears started before I started writing. We got back on July 1st after an amazing day in Chicago. There were over 200 children at the camp that day. I met my favorite camper on this day. His name was Lazar, and he was 5 or 6 years old. He came to camp with his sister, who had been there before. During the opening, I started dancing with him to our song, Live Peace. He followed my footsteps and had a smile a mile wide. We danced the entire song. He then went with his group to start his day, and I went to drama to begin the first rotation. I didn't see Lazar until the last rotation after lunch. During lunch, I thought about Lazar and hoped I didn't miss him. Each group was about 50 children this day, so it was possible I missed him if he was quiet during drama, which made me sad. I was in luck because after lunch, he marched up the stairs and waved at me when he passed me in the hall. He was so excited. He engaged in our activity of like and dislike, saying he liked most things, but when he changed his thumb to show the opposite opinion, he made big movements. As we set up for our play, I went and grabbed him to be a zook. So we would use children in the play, so it wasn't just us acting for them, so we would try to get children involved. He willingly came with me and left his sister to be a zook, while she was a yuk. As we performed the play, he was playing along and yelling out, "We are zooks," all together. He was so cute. As our interpreter and our group leader, Wayne, talked with the children about what happened, he was engaged and focused on them the whole time. So this is from June 23rd, 2018. Well, we had our Shippaville Friendship Camp today. Again, my favorite place to have camp. My buddy Lazar was there. As soon as he came to survey group, he waved to me. I was so happy that he remembered me. It really helped me to realize how special this trip is and that in 40 minutes, we do make a difference. He was in the last group, so we went to the closing together. He danced with me, his sister took a picture of us, and I have an awesome picture, as you can see, of us on my phone this year. Yay, he gave me a big hug in the school, and of course, I signed his bag. The best part most life-affirming part, was when I was taking stuff to the bus. He was waiting for me at the gate by the school. He called my name and ran over and gave me the biggest hug. I had to drop everything to hug him back. I'm leaving a little piece of my heart in Shippaville again. I hope there is some way for me to get back next year, but definitely 2 years from now, so I can check on it. After camp, we then went to Mostar, where we stay at an orphanage, and so the top picture at the left, typically children from the orphanage do leave when we're there. However, some of the children aren't able to leave the orphanage, and so this is one of our people on the trip, and just engaging in football, soccer, and then this is during another camp, just in a quiet moment, talking with someone. So, as I reread journal entries, thought of memories, and talked with people to prepare, I realized talking about Bosnia and Herzegovina leads us to a deeper conversation about current events in our world. How do we respond to genocide that is currently happening in Gaza? Do we wait 30 years to call attention to it? Or do we call attention to it now, especially when our government is sending weapons used in the genocide? And it's happening to children. On September 18, 2023, Save the Children reported that it had already been the deadliest year for children's deaths in the West Bank. 38 Palestinian children have been killed by Israeli forces. This is approximately more than one Palestinian child killed per week, and the same amount of time, 6 Israeli children have been killed. No children should be killed because of war, but we need to call out when things aren't right, and attacking hospitals is not right. I think we've all learned that we need to be vocal and speak up so that people know where we stand and what we support. It is important to remember there are no perfect victims. Just because you're a victim right this minute, you do not remain a victim your entire life, and you can do things wrong in your life. We need to acknowledge that. How are we, and so as I'm standing here, I'm asking you, how are we called to respond as individuals, as a congregation, and as a city? So just kind of think about that. How are you kind of called to respond to when you're seeing things that shouldn't be happening? Is one side right? Is one side wrong? We can have a conversation. I'm going to tell you, I know, we don't know what started. It's always going to be a back and forth. We did this because they did this to us. But you can always find the thing that led to that. There's always something before it that leads to it. But I think it's important to recognize when you're destroying communities and there's not a safe place for people to go to get hospital care, to get medical needs, and to just be humans, remembering people's humanity. And I think that's the important thing. So, any ideas? What we can do as people?
Write your local official to start?
You can write your local official. I challenge you to write your national officials more. So your local congressman, your state, your senators in the U.S. Senate, reach out to the White House. Listen, you never know what story is going to attract attention. Someone's going to look at it, and if we as a group say we're all going to reach out to these people, at least at the senator level, that will be multiple notifications. And when they receive multiple notifications on the same topic, there is more initiative to engage with those differencing of opinions. Yes?
Amnesty International is a good source for things you can do and human rights information worldwide.
So Amnesty International is a good place for resources, he was saying. Anything else?
I'm caught with this and with everything we've heard this morning also. Stories are so important. It becomes a big part of what makes us react. And remembering those stories and highlighting those stories when we're talking about it makes a big difference.
Any other suggestions, thoughts? So I just ask you to do a little bit of research on your own so that you can think about what you need to do as an individual. But also, I think this has been the best forum for our congregation because we have been having these discussions and thoughts and deeper conversations, and I think sometimes we don't even realize people's backgrounds, because I know Pastor Joe was like, where did you come up with that statement on something that we were discussing? And it was just because this is what my belief is, and that's through my lived experience. So I just ask you, do some praying, do some thinking, and do what your heart is calling you to do. Thank you.
Thank you, Andy, for sharing your story about Peacework, and this is international Peacework, right? The recovery from a genocide or atrocity shows that these really, really big problems that feel very large are also so very personal. That you and your story is such a powerful thing to share and to bring away, even from these events that seem really beyond our scope. So thank you for sharing your story. Also, thank you for your brevity. We are a little bit ahead of time, so what we'll do is we'll take about 15 minutes and we'll reconvene here 15 minutes early. So at 1:45, our scheduled, right, 1:45? Yes, our scheduled 2 p.m. Lecture will begin, and that's Pastor Eric Kusman and the New Jersey Synod Prison Ministry team. So thank you to all our presenters, and we'll see you back a little bit early.